I wish I could tell you I lost control for a second, and it was all a blur. That would make me sound like someone a judge might feel sorry for. But that's not the truth. The truth is I stood there under a streetlight long enough to see my breath in the cold and my reflection in his shiny black paint, and I made a choice. I picked up a terracotta planter from his front steps, and I put it through his windshield. The sound was sharp and bright and mean, like a door slamming on the life I used to have. 10 minutes later my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold my phone, and by the next afternoon my face was on a county website I'd never imagined visiting. I am 29 years old, recently unemployed, and waiting for a court date for criminal mischief over $1,500. And the man whose car I wrecked? He hasn't said a word to me since the night he blocked me. That's the part that stings the most. He won by doing nothing. His name is Aaron. We met at a trivia night I went to with my cousin. He slid the answer sheet across the table when I couldn't remember who sang Dancing in the Dark, and said, Springsteen. Trust me, I liked that he was quiet and sure. He works supply chain for a regional grocery chain, which sounds boring until you hear someone who cares talk about trucks and routes and how a storm in Ohio can empty a shelf in Florida. He made the world make sense in simple lines. Plan ahead, confirm twice, show up. I was all curves and detours. I worked reception at a dental office, knew every patient's dog's name, and never once balanced my checkbook correctly. Somehow we fit, until we didn't. I was not a liar, not at first. I was a softener. I would say, I'm on my way, when I still had a towel on my head. I would say it's not a big deal when a bill was past due. Aaron noticed the small things and didn't make speeches, he just adjusted. He took over the rent transfers because I was always late. He set reminders to get my car inspected. He kept spare batteries in a labeled box. I told my friends I'd finally found a man who made me feel safe. I didn't tell them it also made me feel seen, which is harder and scarier, because when someone sees you, they notice when you start to slide. The slide started last fall. I went out with coworkers more. It wasn't cheating, it was attention. I liked the way the bartender remembered my order, and a guy from the gym complimented my laugh. I told myself Aaron wouldn't mind if I stayed late because I'm not doing anything wrong. When he asked if I could text when I left the bar, I called it controlling. When he said, I just worry, I said, worry about yourself. He kept trying in his simple way. Set a day for us, phones down, make tacos, watch a movie. I would say yes, then change plans at the last minute. I wanted him to chase me. He did for a while. The night it really cracked, we were supposed to go to his manager's housewarming. I had already promised my coworker I'd stop by her birthday first. I told Aaron I'd be 20 minutes. An hour later he texted, Are you okay? I wrote back, Relax. I took a shot with a girl I barely knew and posted a story with a song that made me look carefree. When I finally showed up, he was on the porch tying a trash bag. He looked relieved when he saw me, then tired when he smelled the tequila. We can still go, he said. I told them we were running late. I said, Why do you always make me feel like a problem? He blinked like I had hit him. I don't, he said. You're just not here. We argued. We said the usual lines. He told me he didn't like how I talked to him when I drank. I told him he didn't like anyone who wasn't him. He said, If this is how it's going to be, I can't do it. I said, Then don't. He went inside. I slept on the couch out of principle, and woke up to his side of the bed cold and neat, and the quiet of a man who had decided. He didn't slam a door. He left his key on the table. The text came after lunch. I'm taking a break. Please don't come by my place. Give me space. Then he blocked me. I held it together for a day. On the second day I started calling from my work phone, hanging up when it went straight to voicemail. On the third day I sat in my car outside his new apartment and told myself I was just going to slide a note under his door, something simple like, I'm sorry, can we talk? I had rehearsed a softer version of myself, the girl from the trivia night who didn't raise her voice. He moved into a complex with neat landscaping and identical buildings that make you feel like you're walking through someone else's life. His car, a black Civic he kept so clean you could use it as a mirror, was parked under a light near the stairs. The planter sat by his door, some hardy plant with silver leaves he said was impossible to kill. I sat there in my car for 14 minutes watching people walk their dogs, and then a woman I didn't know came down his stairs. She wasn't in a party dress or anything dramatic. She was in leggings and a sweatshirt, holding a reusable bag and smiling at a text. She walked past me and I watched her get into a blue Prius and leave. It could have been his neighbor. It could have been a DoorDash driver. It could have been anything, but I decided it was something, because something hurt more than nothing. I got out of my car. The night air had that clean chill that makes everything feel too sharp. I went up the stairs. His door was closed. I knew better than to knock, because I could imagine him opening it and looking at me the way he did when he chose the quiet over the fight. I didn't want quiet. I wanted noise. I wanted to scare him into feeling something. I went back down the stairs and stood in front of his car and saw myself in the hood, eyes too bright, mouth in a tight line I didn't recognize. That's when I picked up the planter. I told myself I would smash it on the ground. I told myself I would make a mess and he would come out, and then we would have to talk. But that isn't what I did. I lifted it and threw it through the windshield, and the glass spidered and then gave way with a crack that made an old man 2 doors down shout, "Hey!" into the night. I froze. The sound gave me what I wanted for exactly 2 seconds. Attention. Then it gave me the thing I didn't want at all. Consequences. I ran. Not far. Not fast. I got into my car and drove 3 blocks and pulled over with my hands numb on the wheel. I thought about going back and sweeping up the pieces and leaving money under his wiper, and a note that said, "I'm sorry." I thought about texting him from a friend's phone. Instead, I went home and washed dirt out from under my nails and told myself I would call a glass repair place in the morning and fix it before he woke up. Like you can mop up a decision. He called the police. Of course he did. There were cameras in the parking lot. There was a neighbor with a Ring doorbell pointed at exactly the angle that saw my face as I lifted the planter. There was my own poor judgment parked in frame, license plate clear as day. 2 officers came to my apartment at 10 the next morning. They were calm and tired and not unkind. They read me my rights in voices that sounded like they had already said the words 5 times before breakfast. I cried and said I was just upset. One of them said, "We get it," and still put the cuffs on, because that is the job. My booking photo is worse than I imagined. Not because I look dangerous. Because I look small and stubborn and wrong. My boss called me 30 minutes after I posted bail. She used words like policy and reputation, and pending outcome, which means fired without the email saying fired. She told me to come pick up my things after hours. I left the bin of patient goodie bags I was supposed to assemble half done on the break room table, and walked out with my plant, and a framed photo of me and Aaron I forgot to put in the trash. I put the frame face down in a box and drove to my mom's house. She hugged me. She also said, "What were you thinking?" which is the only question anyone has asked me that is both fair and impossible to answer. Aaron didn't text. He didn't gloat. He didn't DM me a photo of the damage. His sister, who always liked me, sent a message through a mutual friend. "Don't contact him. He's not safe with you right now." Safe. The word hit me like the planter hit the glass. I always thought of myself as the one who needed safety. I never thought about being the unsafe thing in someone else's story. The estimate for the repair came through the detective. $3,780 for glass, labor, and bodywork for the hood I dented when the planter bounced. Over $1,500 in my state moves you from misdemeanor to felony. The public defender I spoke to over a shaky phone call said we could try to negotiate it down, but I should prepare for the worst. I asked what the worst meant and she said a record, in that soft way professionals have when they can't sugarcoat something anymore. On top of that, Aaron filed for a protective order. I was served by a deputy with arms like tree trunks who handed me a stack of papers, and a list of places I was not allowed to be. Seeing his name next to the words "protected party" made my stomach drop. There is no version of my life where I thought I would need to be legally kept away from a person who once left me notes in my lunch. People picked sides quietly. The friends who liked the version of me that closes down bars disappeared. The ones who drink coffee at kitchen tables and believe in Wednesdays called to ask if I needed groceries. My cousin told me, "He's not coming back from this," and I said, "I know," and then found out what it feels like to cry without anyone to put a hand on your back. I tried to write Aaron a letter I wouldn't send. I wrote "I'm sorry" 6 times and none of them meant enough. I made a list of things I could fix. I sold the purse I bought last spring and the shoes I never wore. I called the court and asked about restitution. I found a new job posting and got to the last line before it asked, "Have you ever been convicted?" And my throat closed. I stopped drinking. Not forever, I don't know, but for now because the last time I said, it was just the tequila talking. It was actually me, and I'm tired of giving the tequila the blame and the credit. This is the part where people expect a twist where he forgives me. There isn't one. He doesn't text. He doesn't watch my stories. He doesn't even hate me in public where I could argue with it. He lives. He goes to work. He gets in a different car while his is in the shop and drives to a life where I am not a point on the map. That is what winning looks like when you are a steady man who got tired of trying to hold together someone who keeps poking holes in the boat. You stop bailing. You swim to shore. When I think about that night, I try to look at it like a stranger would. A woman stood in front of her ex's car, lifted something heavy, and destroyed something he worked hard to pay for because he wouldn't answer her calls. It is not romantic. It is not a grand gesture. It is not even complicated. It's selfish and loud. The worst part is that 2 hours before I did it, I could have driven home and slept and woken up and chosen something else. I didn't. Now I get to find out who I am when the easy version of myself doesn't work. I picked up extra shifts at a diner because you don't need a clean record to pour coffee and ask, hash browns or fruit? I walk to the bus stop because my car needs new tires and there is no extra money. I go to meetings a friend suggested, the kind where people say their name and their worst choice and nobody laughs. I tell the truth out loud to strangers because I can't tell it to him. The court date is in 6 weeks. I'll stand there in a blouse that doesn't make me look like I think I'm special and I'll say guilty, and I'm sorry and yes ma'am and no sir, and then I'll make payments every month that will be a reminder and, maybe one day, a receipt for a lesson learned the ugliest way possible. Sometimes I walk past his complex on the far sidewalk. I don't look toward his building. I look at the light over the parking space and I think about glass and sound, and a feeling that lasted 2 seconds and cost me everything that mattered. I go home, make tea and sit with my hands in my lap until the part of me that wants to move and break and demand attention settles down. Then I get up and wash the cup, and I try very quietly to be the kind of person who could be trusted with a set of keys.